Welcome to the rebroadcasting of Upstream Prevention's first community education event, Untangling SEL. The webinar is funded by Upstream's Community Prevention Grant from DMHA. My name is Dawn LaPlante, and I'm a project coordinator with Upstream Prevention. Our guest speakers for this webinar are from the school care team in Northern Indiana. Heather Miller and Tina Wooldridge are both very knowledgeable in the subject of social emotional learning. Their bios are in the chat box. Please feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions about the subject. Upstream Prevention does apologize for the delay at the beginning of the webinar recording. Technology works great when it works. Upstream hopes you enjoy the rebroadcasting of our Untangled SEL webinar.
Topics through a parent's lens.
Great, thanks, Heather. My name is Tina Wooldridge, also with the school care team, and we are going to get started this evening with a little poll. So on the screen, you're going to see about 10 different items, and we just want to hear from you if you are a fan of those or not. So you can see the first few on your screen. If you can just click on either I'm a fan, I'm indifferent, or I'm not a fan, and then keep scrolling until you've answered all 10. Which of these items are you a fan of? Which are you not a fan of? And which ones are you indifferent towards? So we'll wait just a moment to get all of your responses. As soon as most of you have responded, we will show the results. All right, excellent. Let's take a look at what we have. So a lot of indifference toward our state fair. Some Marvel movie fans, I see. Let's see. Okay, kind of even split with spicy foods. Of course, we're from Indiana, so we love hayrides.
Wow. Everyone loves that hayride.
We're right down the middle on country music as well. Great. Scary movies. Ooh, yeah. That's not surprising.
Wow.
Fried pickles. Okay, we love our fried pickles in Indiana. The Indy 500, a lot of indifference toward it. Snow. Ooh, look at that. Very even on the fans and not fans. And then we have a lot of Hallmark holiday movie fans in our space this evening. Thank you so much for participating in that. That was just to get us started, a little bit of fun. Thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself, your likes and your dislikes and your preferences. Now we're actually going to ask you to go a little deeper and do some self-reflection. So what we're asking you to think about is when you read each statement that you see on the screen, where would you place yourself on the continuum from totally disagreeing to totally agreeing with each of these statements? So as we read through these, just decide where would you place yourself on that continuum. So our first statement is students and educators' experience in the classroom today is largely the same as when I was in school. Where would you put yourself on that continuum? The next statement, a school's job should only be to teach academic skills such as reading, writing, and math. Do you agree or disagree with that? Next statement, parents, not teachers, should teach children how to behave and how to get along with others. Okay, our next statement is I know, understand, and support the mission of the school my child attends. And then our final statement, I model for my child or my children how to respond when I disagree with someone. So where you landed on the continuum of agreeing or disagreeing with each of those statements will directly impact how you process and internalize tonight's discussion. So in order to prepare our minds a little for further discussion, there's a short parable that we'd like to tell you.
Okay, close your eyes or just look away from your screen. Let yourself imagine with me for just a moment. It's Monday morning. You wake up and realize that you forgot to set your alarm. You're late. Great. Now you're running behind for that important meeting. You envision your coworkers waiting watching the clock, and becoming more and more annoyed because you aren't there. Where are your favorite pants? They're still wet and in the washing machine. You make a last-minute wardrobe change, grab your toothbrush, and rush down the stairs. As you stand brushing your teeth at the kitchen sink, the coffee maker overflows. You spill coffee down the front of your shirt. There's no time to change, so you grab a scarf to cover up the stain. The minutes tick by. Traffic is slow. You check your watch, red light. You grip the steering wheel, grit your teeth, your cheeks flush, your muscles are tight. Finally, you're in your parking spot. You scramble to check yourself in the mirror before dashing inside. The elevator's slow. Should you take the stairs? But it's 3 flights. Your stomach rumbles, your bladder twinges. You put your hand on the doorknob of the meeting room. You know they're waiting. Are you ready to perform at your best?
We're all familiar with these feelings of anxiety and stress, but do we really understand why these feelings impact our performance? This pyramid illustrates a concept that helps us understand how stress and insecurity can keep us from reaching our fullest potential. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's a fundamental concept that teachers learn when they study education. It explains what people need so they can survive and ultimately thrive. In 1943, American psychologist Abraham Maslow first proposed this theoretical hierarchy of needs. Essentially, he taught that people won't reach their highest potential until their more basic needs are met. So at the bottom of the pyramid are those physiological needs like food, water, sleep, and shelter. And then we move up into safety needs, the need for love and belonging, and the need for self-esteem and self-respect. Maslow believed that as humans, we must meet the needs of one level of the pyramid before moving on to the next. In order to reach the top, where people thrive, they need the building blocks that make up the lower parts of the pyramid to be settled and in place. So his theory helps us to identify the reason why, if you had lived through the morning in our parable, you would not be prepared to work at your highest potential. In the same way, in order to be ready to learn, students must attend to those physical, social, and emotional needs first before they're able to move on to higher order thinking and processing academic content. This has always been the case, but the concept has moved to the forefront recently in light of the number of stressors facing students and teachers, especially during the last couple of years. Do you ever stop to think about how different growing up is today for our students and our children? Think about school. How different is it today than it was when you were growing up? What I'd like you to do now is just drop into the chat box what you think are some of the most significant differences between the experience in a classroom today and your experience as an elementary, middle, or high school student. So just drop into the chat. What do you think is different today than when you were a student? Technology, yes. Testing as well. Especially high stakes. Yeah, more pressures. And some of those pressures come from technology and testing. Social media. Social expectations. Yeah. Okay. Encouraging students to hydrate. That's true. I don't ever remember using the drinking fountain as a student. Those are great. Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah, it's clear that social media and technology impact our children in ways we could never have imagined. Not only is their experience different, the whole world is different. Those differences aren't slowing down, they're speeding up. Change is the new normal. Here's another pyramid. This pyramid illustrates what is known as the MTSS pyramid, or the multi-tiered system of support. This framework has been around in the field of education for about 25 years. The pyramid categorizes programs and strategies that the school utilizes to support academic and behavioral development. Each program on the pyramid is meant to support students where they are. The programs on the bottom of the pyramid are provided to all students. These programs are designed to support a positive school culture, to secure safety, and to develop a sense of belonging for all students in all classrooms. Think back to Maslow's pyramid. The programs at the base of the MTSS pyramid provide the foundation that Maslow identified as the basic needs that all students require so that they may learn effectively. The next tier on this pyramid shows programs that are provided to some students. These programs are intended to help students who are starting to struggle with academics or beginning to develop behavioral issues. Not all students receive these programs. Only those who identified with specific needs receive these strategies. The top of the pyramid is left for programs intended to help students in crisis situations. The fewest students meet the criteria for needing these programs. In a perfect world, no students would meet the crisis criteria. The ultimate goal of teachers in schools is to provide programs and strategies at the bottom of the pyramid in order to prevent crisis. The bottom of the pyramid is all about creating a positive, safe, and supportive school environment. SEL fits at the bottom of the pyramid. Maslow pointed out that students need to feel safe, have positive friendships, and experience a sense of security in order for the brain to take in, process, and retain new information. Again, kids need to be surrounded by positive people in a positive environment in order to learn. What are some of the things you think schools should provide to your children to increase a sense of safety and belonging? We all have different ideas on how to achieve a sense of safety and belonging. So in a public school setting, a setting that includes many ideas from many different types of households and families, how can everyone possibly get on the same page to ensure ideas and projects align? The answer is mission statements. Mission statements are created to help align people to ideas. Mission statements declare the purpose of an organization. Does anyone happen to know their school's mission statement?
We've provided here a few examples for you of some public school mission statements throughout the state of Indiana. As we take a look at these examples, what I'd like you to do is drop into the chat box some words or ideas that stand out to you. So let's start with Center Grove School Corporation's mission statement, which is to develop knowledgeable, confident, and responsible citizens through inspiration and innovative learning opportunities. Fort Wayne Community Schools' mission statement is to educate all students to high standards, enabling them to become productive, responsible citizens. Warsaw Community Schools' mission statement is to inspire and equip all students to continuously acquire and apply knowledge and skills while pursuing their dreams and enriching the lives of others. And Indianapolis Public Schools' mission statement is to empower and educate all students to think critically, creatively, and responsibly, to embrace diversity, and to pursue their dreams with purpose. So as you listen to those or read through those mission statements, just drop into the chat. What are some words or ideas that stood out to you? All students. Yes. Responsible, enriching the lives of others, pursuing their dreams. I was actually really encouraged to see that in a couple of mission statements. Diversity. So these mission statements aim, the aim of the mission statements is actually to help schools to define a few different things like the role of public education, what they're hoping to see their students become as adults. So I think that everyone can agree that parents should be teaching their students those skills at home. But at some point we have to acknowledge that not every parent does. So for a variety of reasons, some parents simply are not effectively modeling for their children the kinds of skills and behaviors that fit in the classroom, where everyone can learn and where everyone can engage in healthy relationships. So that idea of all students is a really important piece. So a school-based social worker we appreciate locally recently referred to schools as a life learning lab. Our families and our homes are like little microcosms of the broader world where our children will regularly interact with other children whose parents parent differently than we do. For schools to carry out their mission to educate, inspire, and equip all students, they have to be able to draw on more than just academic content. In recent years, social emotional learning, or SEL, has become an umbrella term for initiatives intended to build the base of the pyramids so that all students can reach their full potential. Critics of SEL have referred to it as everything from simply the latest educational fad to terrifying Orwellian psychological manipulation and indoctrination. So what precisely is SEL?
There really is no single standardized definition of SEL and no single standardized list of which programs and strategies schools must use to support SEL. The term SEL could be replaced by terms such as character education, soft skills, 21st century skills, or employability skills. Some SEL programs and curricula aim to reduce misbehavior, while others aim to prepare all students for future careers. At the school care team, we envision schools where empathy, empowerment, connection, and belonging are the norm for all students and all staff. We believe that one way to get there is by promoting the IDOE's social emotional competencies for everyone in the building.
Social emotional learning encompasses a set of knowledge, skills, and attitudes related to managing emotions, achieving personal and collective goals, maintaining supportive relationships, and making responsible, caring decisions. Students learn, apply, and practice SEL skills in the same way they learn more traditionally academic skills, through modeling, instruction, and practice, both inside and outside of the classroom. Often parents struggle to embrace the idea that social emotional learning belongs in the classroom. But the reality is that regardless of the academic content, the quality of a teacher's lesson plans, or their philosophy and practice of classroom management, if a student is not ready to learn, they simply won't learn. Think about the teachers you had growing up. Which teachers were your favorites? Why were they your favorites? If you wouldn't mind, drop in the chat a few of the traits, the characteristics, or the qualities that your favorite teachers displayed. So think for a minute about who were your favorite teachers, and then what was it about them that put them on your list of favorite teachers? What kinds of traits did they demonstrate or qualities did they have? A passion for reading to the students, humor,
Look at
empathy,
those fly up the chat box.
engaging and funny, understanding and caring, trust, compassion. Thank you for sharing those. What I see, baked for us. I would love to have that teacher. What we see as a common thread in all of those descriptions is relationship. We are simply hardwired for connection. And the teachers we remember with fondness are typically those we felt connected to. They developed a classroom environment where we felt safe, we felt valued, and we felt encouraged to share and grow. We knew that these teachers cared about more than our test scores. They were likely socially and emotionally competent.
SEL contributes to readiness to learn, and it fosters great connection. In addition, SEL programs have been shown to lead to a reduction in suspension rates and fewer youth involved with the criminal justice system. SEL increases graduation percentages, lifetime financial earning potential, and overall physical and mental health. These benefits often begin to take shape as soon as SEL is introduced and can last throughout adulthood. SEL increases potential social behaviors such as kindness, sharing, and empathy. SEL also improves student attitudes towards school, increases personal resilience, and reduces stress among students and adults. Everybody needs a sense of safety and belonging, and everyone stands to benefit from developing greater skills related to working well with others. These are the fundamental and positive outcomes that schools dedicated to SEL strive for.
So if a school's mission is to graduate responsible citizens who are equipped to enter the workforce, then it's important to recognize also and acknowledge that employability skills and social emotional skills are virtually one and the same. The top 4 skills employers are looking for, according to a Forbes report, are teamwork, problem solving, sound decision-making, and effective communication. If you notice, none of those are academic skills. Those skills align with specific SEL competencies like connection, collaboration, critical thinking, and mindset. Employability skills and SEL skills really are one and the same.
The IDOE has developed a framework of these 7 social emotional competencies. Competency is the ability to do something successfully and efficiently. You may claim to be a competent typist, a competent athlete, or a competent welder, but it's not enough for someone to claim competency on their own. How does an employer really know that someone is a competent welder? Imagine if someone simply claimed to be a competent dentist, but they had no training, no testing, no standards to prove that they can do the work. Would you trust them to fill a cavity? Would you trust that they knew the proper dosage of Novocaine? I wouldn't. We expect our dentists to follow a standard that is set by a group of trained experts. SEL competencies are no different. The SEL competencies for the state of Indiana were compiled by a group of trained experts in education, learning, and child development. The people who stand behind SEL are people who care deeply for the well-being of all students, no matter what their background, race, or orientation. These experts created a list of competencies so that all educators across Indiana would pursue SEL to develop employability skills in the same manner. The SEL competencies make sure that everyone is on the same page, moving toward the same goals.
So on the next slide, we have for you a table that shows you the Department of Education's competencies and then what we call the indicators, or how will we know if someone has that. We're actually going to drop into the chat a link that provides this resource for you if it's something that you'd like to have yourself that you can print out. So the school care team adapted the framework from the Indiana Department of Education to sort of simplify what are we talking about when we refer to these SEL competencies. So you'll notice on the left-hand side, we have the definition of each of those competencies. So for example, when we talk about sensory motor integration, we're talking about that ability to sense and recognize sensations in the body and how those connect to emotions. And then once we've gotten that competency down, we move on to insight, where we can identify those emotions that we experience in the body and understand how they affect us. So from the youngest age, students are able to start identifying, I feel something in my tummy, for example. Is it because I'm hungry or is it because I'm stressed? And then they can begin to use words to describe those emotions. Once they understand what those emotions are and how they're impacting them, they can move on to regulating, which means that they can measure the intensity of their emotion and then employ strategies to address those stronger emotions. So if I'm just a little stressed, or if I'm so anxious that I can't concentrate, I should have ideas of things that I can do to bring that emotion back down to size. Once the student is able to master those first 3 competencies, then they're able to begin connecting with other people. And our definition is to empathize with others and to perceive a situation through a lens of diverse backgrounds and cultures. It's a really important skill as adults. So the next one is collaboration, which means that a student can work well with others in a group or on a team. The sixth competency is critical thinking, meaning that a student can understand their own thinking process and that enhances learning and they can make more responsible decisions. And then the last one is mindset, when a student can practice what we call cognitive flexibility and a willingness to learn. So on the right-hand side, you'll see some ways of identifying if you or a student or someone you know is actually able to say that they're competent in these. So as Heather mentioned, it's not enough for me to say that I'm competent. I should be able to look at these indicators and see some skills that I can continue to grow in to become more competent in the 7 social emotional competencies.
Because the IDOE realizes that each county and district has different needs, the DOE allows schools to choose the programs and strategies that best fit the needs of their specific communities. The programs available to schools are evidence-based and continue to be evaluated by research and data collection. The competencies were put in place to prevent SEL from becoming what many people fear, a tool to promote a personal agenda or ideology.
So this year, as you all know, there has been quite a bit of fear surrounding SEL. Parents across Indiana, and in fact across the whole country, have begun expressing concern, at times rather publicly and aggressively, about SEL in schools. Perhaps you share one or more of these concerns, or you have other concerns. Let's take a look at a few of the most commonly expressed concerns. One concern is, as a parent, I don't have enough information about SEL and what's included under that umbrella. Another concern is that SEL is a gateway to introducing ideas and beliefs that are counter to messages students are receiving at home. A third concern is that SEL instruction causes children to become more self-centered. And then a fourth concern is that SEL data collection is an invasion of privacy and may even result in my child being treated differently based on the data that's collected. So we'll talk in just a little bit about some strategies. One that I wanted to comment on was the self-centered. If you look back at the table on the previous slide, the first three competencies relate to the individual. And so I think if we stayed there, then maybe we are promoting self-absorption. But the idea is once I'm able to attend to my own sensations in my body, my emotions, and I can regulate them, then I'm able to begin interacting with my school or my community in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, it's just a part of the natural progression of developing across the scales of.
Exactly.
So let's consider a different lens. What can you do if you have some of these or other concerns? If you need more information to help you understand why a school chooses to implement a certain strategy, where can you find it? And can you trust the information you do find? What should you do if you discover that your child is being exposed to ideas that differ from your beliefs and values? We recommend that you start by considering a different lens. Looking at things from a different perspective means to consider another person's experience and viewpoint. What would this look like from his or her point of view? We aren't suggesting you give up your perspective or accept ideas that oppose your values or beliefs, but we do encourage everyone to consider that things may look differently when looking at the world with the consideration of another person's experience. When we do this, situations suddenly look different.
Let me share an example of how perspective taking relates to our discussion. In Northeast Indiana, recently, some parents formed a Facebook group where they share concerns about SEL in schools. One parent posted disturbing excerpts from books that were found in that school's library. In response to that post, people accused the school librarian of being a pervert, of practicing witchcraft, and of scheming to undermine conservative family values. One member of the group who knew the school librarian went to the administrators of the school to discuss the concerns. When the principal invited the librarian to join the conversation, the librarian explained that the school has a clearly defined protocol in place for parents who wish to challenge content. She explained that she is not at liberty to choose which books the school library offers. She simply receives shipments of books and catalogs them. She expressed frustration that no parent had contacted the school or her directly prior to posting the excerpts, and she expressed her surprise at the personal attacks against her character.
So let's see if we can untangle this complex situation. If the concerned parents had stopped for just a moment to ask questions, to consider the librarian's point of view, they may have learned an important piece that was missing from their story. In this case, the librarian was only putting the books on the shelf that came in the delivery. It was not up to her which books came in the delivery, so it was unfair for the parents to attack her character. How do you suppose this sudden and negative attack on character impacted the librarian's life? How would your life be impacted? What could the parents have done differently in order to express their concerns? Asking questions like these is putting SEL into action right now. We're practicing SEL. As we move through this conversation and through this webinar, we're practicing and building our own SEL competencies. Here are some questions to consider when trying to understand the actions or decisions made by someone at your child's school. First, how might the other person be impacted by this situation? What do I know about this person? Am I believing something I've heard, or do I actually know this to be a fact? How might their needs, opinions, and experiences differ from mine? How might their needs, opinions, and experiences be similar to mine? So here are a few suggestions for how to proceed if you have concerns about your child's experience at school. First, research before reacting. Is your information coming from social media? Is it a secondhand account? If there are terms or concepts you're unfamiliar with, can you find out more information from a variety of sources before reacting? Next, clarify your goals. If you decide to contact the school, be clear beforehand about what you hope to accomplish. Next, express genuine appreciation. Thanking school staff for their incredibly challenging work can build a bridge of positive communication before you address your concerns. Get curious and ask questions. Ask yourself some of the point of view questions before you ask teachers or school leaders, just to practice on yourself. After asking yourself, decide which questions would be the most productive to ask teachers or school leaders. Check to make sure you are preparing questions rather than accusations when you plan to speak with administrators and teachers. And finally, you can request access to information. If you want to know more about something that you can't find on your school's website, ask a school representative where you can get access. If you want to know what your student is supposed to be learning in each subject, you can go online and find that grade level's learning objectives. Often, the more you learn, the less concerned you may be. Finally, if the school is collecting survey data and you want to know what your child is being asked, simply request a copy of the survey questions. What questions will be on the survey? Will my child's identity be protected? What will the data be used for? You may be surprised what valuable tools surveys are doing to help schools improve.
So finally, we would encourage you to be proactive and positive. So we talked a little bit about what perspective taking means, considering things through another lens. And then next, we would suggest that you offer alternatives. So that's a way around not agreeing with something that the school is asking your child to participate in. And then finally, model the behaviors that you hope to see from your children. So what if the parents who were concerned about the objectionable content had taken time to research their district's policy related to how to challenge content that they believe to be inappropriate? If they couldn't locate the policy, what if they had simply requested that information? What if they had clarified what they were trying to accomplish, then contacted the librarian directly, thanked her for her work with students, then asked questions about the specific books they found objectionable? If they still weren't satisfied, what if they had suggested that their child read an alternate book, but complete the same assignment? Our children are watching as we navigate life. They see how we respond to situations and to people with differing perspectives from ours. If we wish to see our children graduate as responsible, productive citizens who are equipped to enter the workforce, then we have the obligation and the privilege of helping to equip them. As schools strive to educate, inspire, and empower all of our students, we can best help our own children by partnering with our schools in this incredibly important and complex work. So we've provided for you here on this final slide a couple of resources that we referred to during the presentation. And now we have some time left to respond to any questions. So I think Kathleen may be popping back on so she can facilitate for us any conversation we want to have or questions.
I am popping back in. So thank you so much for going through this for us. I really appreciate it. And I think you did a really great job of outlining some of those core pieces for people to look at. couple of things for the attendees. If you have questions, please go ahead and either pop them into the Q&A box and I can tackle those. You could also probably put them in the chat box, but you got to get them out in the world somehow for me to respond to them and toss them to Heather and Tina. I am also going to pop into the chat box because when I set up the registration link, I forgot to collect demographics and we need that for our grant reporting. So if you haven't completed that, please go ahead and click that Google form and take care of that. And then also Heather, your sharing wasn't set up for the SEL competencies. It was saying we had to get access. So if you can either send that to me, I'll make sure the attendees get it, or if you can flip that access, then we'll send out the link.
Yeah, I'll just send you the actual file and we can send it out.
That also works perfect.
Yep.
And it looks like we have a question from Laura. So hello, Laura. I believe this is Laura Keys down in Evansville, who said it was great and wants to know, how have parents responded to this material?
Yeah, I would say that we're early on in that process. We're trying to partner with schools and districts in Northeast Indiana to facilitate conversations. So the hope tonight was that we would have parents attending who would be willing to have a conversation with us about their concerns. So I would say we're too early in the process to really say how parents are going to respond to this information. I will say the Facebook page that I referred to, the person who's attempting to build bridges is not having a lot of success. It feels like a lot of parents are digging their heels in and believing what they're reading on social media, maybe above and beyond asking direct questions of their own school.
Yeah, and when I was looking at the registration report and sharing with Heather and Tina, we had hoped that we would get some more parents, and I'm sure that some of you on here are parents, but at least the names I was recognizing, you were all similar prevention people or community-based people or school-based individuals. So we're, as I think one of them mentioned at the beginning, we might have hit the wrong audience with this, but hopefully this gave you some thoughts or at least ways to explain it more. And different approaches, because I know that's something that I at least could use and benefited from. Yes,
Yeah,
and
so we're trying to share strategies with you to help put parents at ease. We think that one of the issues that parents feel is a lack of transparency from schools. And in fact, I was on a neighborhood post, and somebody was really upset that their child received a vision screening and a hearing screening at school, which is a common thing. It's been going on for years and years. But once that parent realized that this is just a screening and she was fine with it, but what she was upset about is she just didn't know about it before it happened. Now we all know the word was probably given to parents and she missed it or something, but I think that I could really sense, even just online in her texts and messages, that she was very alarmed. And then when other parents just were explaining to her how normal that is and how it's been going on for years, and that it is just a screening, it's not replacing your doctor visit, then she started to tone down and feel better and more confident. But that's just a case of being transparent.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment earlier, somebody mentioned social media being a major difference between when we were students and students today. I would add to that media has also played a role, that now we take the sensational stories and then we share them out with everybody in the country or everybody in the world. So we have these isolated incidents across the country where under the umbrella of SEL, a teacher or an administrator might have made a choice that isn't a very good choice, but now everyone in the country knows about it. And so then we start to believe this is what SEL is, or this is what every school and every teacher intend when they discuss SEL. So I think part of it is, as we talked about, researching and asking questions about what is my school actually doing, not what did that one school out west do or this one teacher do. So it's an important strategy to keep in mind.
I think that perspective taking that you all talked about is also super important. And also that, that kind of pause and let's think through it. Let's take a step back. Because I think some of the pushback and some of those things, it ends up just, inflaming it more if we get exasperated. Like, these are good skills. Like, these are things we need. adults and youth, right? And if we push back too hard in that exasperated tone, we're just making it a little bit worse, likely. And so that pause and that perspective taking, like you said, doing some digging and asking good questions, and ideally questions without heat and emotion, that type of thing.
I wanted to comment quickly on Laura's comment about surveys. So there's definitely pushback against surveys this year, and I really think that if parents know that they're allowed to look at the questions and talk to someone from the school and realize that the schools also want to protect the identity of the students, we don't want to correlate answers back to a specific student. In the surveys that we provide with our programs, it's all dumped into one data pool, and we have no way of identifying which individual student responded a certain way to a certain survey. So I think if parents understand that everyone is on the same page in protecting identity, and we are only taking those surveys so that we know if the programs are effective or if they're not effective, and also how can we improve those programs so that we're helping provide students with what they need in an even bigger way, providing even bigger impact for schools.
We also had a comment about not really a question, just the sadness, and I think this is probably shared by several about this backlash and this incorrect comparison, and there's lots of work to be done. So this at least was our attempt at a first step of, let's put some of this information out there, and the kind of that quote unquote correct information, let's help break it down, let's think about it, let's talk about it, is our first step at least. And so again, another comment about the loud minority seems to be winning at times, and so having that positive and understanding feedback from, even if it's a quiet supportive minority or majority, is also super useful. So
we spoke with a superintendent in Northeast Indiana who mentioned a parent who was being very vocal at school board meetings, and so she actually invited him to a one-on-one meeting and he declined. So I think it's that idea of them understanding their goals. So as we talked about, what's the goal? If I'm going to a meeting, what is my reason for being there? What am I hoping to accomplish? Is it really just to get the spotlight, or do I have genuine concerns? And if so, then I should be willing to sit down and speak with people from the district who want to talk things out.
And actually, I'm reading the comments and I'm having a thought about the parents who aren't speaking out because they're actually proponents of social emotional learning. So this could be something that you do and encourage those parents to speak out, and those parents could actually benefit from gaining more information through a program such as the one we just presented to you, so that they feel more equipped and more empowered to go and have a discussion with those parents who may be misunderstanding what the intentions are behind social emotional learning. If the minority is loud and aggressive and negative, that can be a conversation that I don't really want to engage in, especially if I'm a little unsure of what SEL is myself. I really may not want to engage in that type of a conversation. But if we can empower the parents that are proponents of social emotional learning by equipping them with more information, they may be more likely to speak up in response and in support of social emotional learning.
I would also add that the perspective taking works in both directions. So even if a parent is angry and saying things that can be perceived as unkind, it's just as important on the other end to begin to take that person's perspective and ask those same questions, that what might this parent be experiencing that's causing them to have these really strong emotions. And I think if both sides are willing to do this perspective taking work, then it's much more likely that we'll arrive at a solution instead of more negativity.
Yeah, I agree.
So Jessica put in there, as someone who's working in that addiction and counseling situations, that how adults struggle with properly describing emotions. And I think that's tremendously true. And so, sharing the feelings wheel, I know School care team up there is a big proponent of sources of strength, which we're trying to get started here. And they've got a really great graphic check-in that's got all sorts of fun colors. Dawn's got it on her bulletin board behind me. But just this idea of trying to pause and think about what our feelings are, and then, at least for me, it's that next step of why am I feeling like this? Like if I'm feeling anger, is it actually anger or is it frustration? Because for me, I get those confused a lot. And so, just trying to talk through those and identify those are super important.
Mm-hmm. In fact, Kathleen, Sources of Strength has the elementary curriculum. And so now, as of next year, kindergarten through 12th. And so even kindergarten students, they take them through the regulation railroad where they identify, what am I feeling? Is it related to an emotion? How big is the emotion? And then if it's a big emotion, what kind of strategies can the student come up with on their own to regulate those emotions? So when we hear great work like that being done and we see the positive impact it has in the classroom, that's why it seems sad that we don't have more buy-in, because we see how that allows every student in the class then to be regulated and to be ready to learn. So if our parents are speaking about how I want my child to be focused on academics, we see how connected they are, that if they're to be focused on academics, everyone in the room needs to be regulated. So
Do we have other questions or thoughts to drop into the chat box?
Yeah, there's a graphic going around out there that points out that this is actually the third, and I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but we just need to stop and reflect that this is the third school year that has been disrupted by the COVID pandemic. That means this is the third school year that parents, students, teachers, administrators have been operating on a critical level of stress, which means that cortisol has been pumping into their systems this is the third year now. So we're all reaching that point of exhaustion and burnout where patience is no longer accessible to us. And that is something to remember, that when a parent possibly comes at someone with aggression, to remember they are operating from a point of dysregulation, just like a toddler would be having a dysregulation moment. So how do you approach a toddler in an effective way? And I'm just realizing that I'm comparing toddlers to parents.
everybody gets this.
Again, it's that slow down, and when somebody is out of, as you said, dysregulated, out of control, and not able to take that breath and calm down, there's, especially right now, there's a really good, environmental reason, global pandemic reason for that, much less whatever the content is.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts or questions floating out there? This is where if I was in person, I would take a drink of water and just pause and not fill the silence. But when it's just me staring at my friends, it's a little harder. Right, well, I'm gonna turn it back over to Dawn, not seeing any comments. I'm gonna disappear my video and mute myself and drop in a couple of links in the chat. It's all yours,
Ladies,
Dawn.
thank you so much for spending the evening with us and giving us a little bit more information about SEL, and especially untangling all the confusion and some of the mess that has been told, and miscommunication has been told throughout our state. Again, thank you so much for spending the time. Those that are on the webinar, we will, like I said before, have the record. It has been recorded, so we will have a link. We will probably go ahead and send you a follow-up email to get the link that was not working earlier to you guys also, and the link to the recording. It was stated that maybe we should send it out to the PTOs, which is a great idea. So we possibly will be doing that. I know my kids' school is having PTO meeting right this minute, so it would have been nice to have all those people join on. But it is such a critical subject that Upstream has decided that they really wanted to get some knowledge into people and kind of filter through all the craziness. Kathleen has put in the links for the evaluation. So if you will fill that out, that will help us continue doing some of our community education events. Like I said, we were hoping to provide that about 3 to 4 times a year. We're hoping to have another one possibly in January, so be on the lookout for something like that. Also, because we forgot to put the demographics in the registration, we just ask that you just fill out real quick the form for demographics for our state. Tonight's webinar was brought to you by Upstream Prevention. Graciously, because we have a DMHA community prevention grant. Again, thank you so much for attending. If you have any additional information or questions, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll leave it open for a couple minutes. And if not, you can always email Kathleen or I, and we will get the questions to Heather and Tina. Thank you all again.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention we did drop in. I created a new link that is unrestricted, so hopefully that works for you.
All right, thank you.